Do you believe that true love can transcend time, distance, and even death? The story I'm going to tell you today will challenge everything you think you know about love. Prepare yourself for an exciting journey that will leave you completely speechless. Before we dive into this thrilling story, leave a comment below saying where you're watching from. Enjoy this journey of love and hope. It was a cold Sunday morning in December 2023 when Elena Martinez, a 32-year-old nurse, was running late for her shift at St. Luke's Hospital. Chicago's biting wind whipped across her face as she hurried down the snow-covered sidewalk, clutching tightly to a coffee cup that was her only source of warmth at that moment. Elena had worked double shifts for 3 consecutive weeks. Her brown eyes were puffy from exhaustion, and she could barely keep her thoughts organized. The loss of her mother 6 months earlier still weighed on her heart like a stone, and the exhausting work was the only thing keeping her from sinking completely into sadness. When she finally arrived at the hospital, something strange happened. At the reception desk, an elderly woman with silver hair and a gentle smile was holding a bouquet of vibrant yellow sunflowers. "Excuse me," the woman said, with a soft voice that reminded Elena of her mother. "Are you Elena Martinez?" Elena stopped, confused. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" The woman extended the flowers to her. "These are for you, dear. My name is Dorothy Thompson, and I have a story to tell that could change your life forever." Elena looked around, still processing what was happening. "I'm sorry, but I think there's some mistake. I don't know any Dorothy Thompson, but I knew your mother, Rosa Martinez," Dorothy said softly, "and she asked me to deliver something very special to you." Elena's heart stopped. Her mother had died of cancer in June, and in her final weeks of life, she had talked about many people Elena had never met, people from her past, stories she had never had time to tell completely. "My mother passed away 6 months ago," Eleanor whispered, her hands trembling as she accepted the flowers. "How did you know her?" Dorothy smiled with tears in her eyes. "How about we have some coffee? I have a story to tell that your mother very much wanted you to know." 20 minutes later, they were sitting in a cozy cafe 2 blocks from the hospital. Dorothy held a cup of hot tea between her hands while Elena waited, her heart beating rapidly. "Your mother and I met 45 years ago," Dorothy began. "We were young, both in our early 20s, working as nurses in the same hospital where you work now." Elena felt a chill. Her mother had never mentioned a friend named Dorothy. "Rosa was the kindest woman I ever met," Dorothy continued, "but she was also the loneliest. She had arrived in the United States from Mexico only 2 years before, didn't speak perfect English, and felt very isolated." Elena nodded. Her mother had told stories about the difficult early years in America. "One day," Dorothy said, her eyes lighting up with the memory, "Rosa was crying in the hospital bathroom. It was late December, Christmas Eve, and she had just received a letter from her family saying they couldn't visit her. She felt completely alone in the world." "What did you do?" "I did the only thing that seemed right. I invited her to spend Christmas with my family. My mother had prepared enough food to feed a small army, and there was always room for one more person at our table." Dorothy paused to take a sip of tea. "But here's the part your mother never told you. That Christmas, my younger brother David was visiting for the first time in 3 years. He was a soldier, had served in Vietnam, and was struggling with trauma that today we call post-traumatic stress. But back then, no one really understood it." Elena leaned forward, completely absorbed in the story. "David was broken," Dorothy continued sadly. "He didn't talk to anyone, barely ate, spent most of his time alone in his room. My family was desperate. We didn't know how to help him. And then Rosa arrived." Dorothy smiled. "And something magical happened. Your mother didn't speak perfect English, and David didn't speak Spanish, but they communicated in a way that went beyond words. She saw the pain in his eyes, and he saw the kindness in her heart." Eleanor's eyes began to fill with tears. They spent the entire night talking in a mixture of English and Spanish, using gestures and smiles when words failed. Rosa told stories about Mexico, about her family, about her dreams. David talked about the war, about the nightmares, about how lost he felt. Dorothy took out a tissue and wiped her own eyes. For the first time in months, I saw my brother smile, really smile. And Rosa, she seemed to have found a purpose, a reason to be here, so far from home. Did they fall in love? Slowly, but deeply, Dorothy confirmed. Over the next 6 months, they were inseparable. David started therapy, with Rosa by his side at every session. She learned English faster, he learned Spanish. They healed each other. Eleanor was completely engrossed in the story, but part of her was confused. Dorothy, why did my mother never tell me about David, and where is he now? Dorothy's face became serious and sad. In June 1979, David was called back to military service. There were growing tensions in the Middle East, and experienced soldiers were needed. He didn't want to go, but he had no choice. What happened? The night before he left, he proposed to Rosa. He bought a simple but beautiful ring, silver with a small emerald, her favorite stone. They planned to marry when he returned. Dorothy paused for a long moment, and Elena felt her heart sink. David never came back. There was an accident during a training exercise overseas. He died instantly. Elena covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Your mother was devastated, completely shattered. She had found the love of her life, and in an instant, he was gone forever. Why did she never tell me? Because it hurt too much, Dorothy explained softly. Rosa kept this story in the deepest part of her heart. She eventually met your father, Francisco, and they had a beautiful and happy marriage. But David was always her first true love. Eleanor was crying openly now. But why are you telling me this now? Dorothy smiled through her own tears. Because in the last days of your mother's life, she called me. She had looked for me after all these years because she wanted you to know something very important. What? Dorothy opened her purse and took out a small, yellowed envelope. She wanted you to know that even when we lose someone we love, love doesn't die. It transforms. It finds other ways to exist in the world. Elena took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, there was a handwritten letter in Spanish, in her mother's delicate handwriting. My dear Elena, she began to read aloud, translating from Spanish. If you are reading this, then Dorothy found you, as I asked her to do. I want you to know about David, because I want you to understand something about true love. Elena paused, her voice breaking with emotion. True love doesn't end when we lose someone. It spreads. Every person you help as a nurse, every heart you heal, every smile you offer to someone in suffering, that is David living through you. That is our love, multiplying in the world. Dorothy watched as Elena continued reading. You have your father's heart, but you have David's soul. The compassion, the ability to see beyond the surface, to heal not just bodies, but spirits. This is the gift he left me, and that now lives through you. Elena looked at Dorothy through tears. Is there more? Keep reading, dear. I have kept David's ring for 44 years. Dorothy has it now, not as a reminder of sadness, but as a symbol that true love is eternal. Wear it and remember, every person you touch with kindness is a way for our love to continue living in the world. Dorothy took a small velvet box from her purse. Inside was the ring exactly as Rosa had described, simple silver with a small emerald that sparkled even in the soft light of the cafe. She wanted you to have this, Dorothy said, placing the ring in Elena's palm. Not as an obligation, but as a reminder that you carry within you a love that is greater than any loss. Elena held the ring against her heart, sobbing. But there's one more thing your mother wanted you to know, Dorothy continued, something she discovered just 2 weeks before she died. Eleanor looked up confused. David had a nephew, a 28-year-old young man who is also a nurse. He works the night shift at the same hospital as you. Elena's heart almost stopped. His name is Daniel Thompson. He's my grandson, son of David's older brother. And Elena, he has the same gentle eyes as his uncle, the same compassionate heart, the same healing soul. Elena couldn't breathe. You're saying I'm saying that your mother believed some people are destined to find each other, even across generations, that true love finds a way to continue, even when we think all is lost. Dorothy took Elena's hands. Daniel doesn't know about you yet. He doesn't even know his Uncle David's whole story. But your mother made me promise that when the right time came, I would arrange for you to meet. How do you know it's the right time? Dorothy smiled. Because today, when you were running to the hospital, you looked lost. Exactly like Rosa looked that Christmas of 1978. And Daniel has been going through a difficult time too. He lost his girlfriend in a car accident 6 months ago. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. You're both carrying similar pain, working in the same place, caring for other people while your own hearts are broken. Your mother believed that maybe you could heal each other, just like she and David did so long ago. Elena looked at the ring in her hands. But what if it doesn't work out? What if it's just coincidence? Then at least you will have met, Dorothy said softly. But dear, if there's one thing I've learned in my 78 years of life, it's that coincidences like these are rarely just coincidences. 2 hours later, Elena was back at the hospital, wearing David's emerald ring on the ring finger of her right hand. Her heart was racing, a mixture of nervousness and hope she hadn't felt in months. Throughout the day, she found herself looking for Daniel Thompson. Every nurse who passed in the hallway, every male voice she heard, she wondered if it might be him. At 6 o'clock in the evening, when her shift was almost over, Elena was organizing medications at the nursing station when she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me, are you Elena Martinez?" She turned around and almost dropped the medications. The man in front of her was about 6 feet tall, with dark brown, slightly wavy hair, and the gentlest eyes she had ever seen. Eyes that seemed familiar in a way she couldn't explain. "Yes," she managed to say. "You are Daniel Thompson, night shift nurse. I just arrived and—" He paused, looking at her with a curious expression. "Sorry, but you look familiar. Have we met?" Elena felt her heart accelerate. "No, we've never met, but this might sound strange. Your grandmother Dorothy approached me today." Daniel's eyes widened. "My grandmother Dorothy? How do you know her?" "It's a long story," Elena said, unconsciously touching the emerald ring. "She knew my mother many years ago. She told me about your Uncle David." Daniel became very quiet. "She told you about Uncle David?" "Yes, about him and my mother Rosa." Daniel leaned against the counter, obviously shocked. Our family always wondered about the mysterious woman David loved. Grandma Dorothy talked about her sometimes, but never told us her name or what happened exactly." Elena took a deep breath. "How about we have coffee after work? I have a lot to tell you." Daniel smiled, and Elena felt something move in her chest, something that had been asleep for months. "I'd love to," he said. "I get off at 7 in the morning. Would you be free for breakfast?" "Perfect." That night, Elena could barely sleep. She lay in bed, looking at the emerald ring on the nightstand, thinking about the incredible story her mother had kept for so long. At 7:15 the next morning, she was sitting in the same cafe where she had met Dorothy, waiting for Daniel. When he arrived, still wearing his nurse uniform, Elena felt her heart accelerate again. "So," Daniel said, settling into the chair across from her, "tell me everything." Elena spent the next hour telling the complete story about Rosa and David, about the Christmas of 1978, about the love that flourished and was interrupted by tragedy, about her mother's letter and the ring she now wore. Daniel listened in silence, his eyes filling with tears several times. "My God," he whispered when she finished. "I always knew there was something special about Uncle David. Grandma Dorothy always talked about how he changed after the war, how he found peace before we lost him. Your grandmother said you didn't know the whole story." "I didn't. I knew he had died in service, that he was the family favorite, but I never knew about the love he found." Daniel paused. "And I never knew that love had left a daughter." They looked at each other in silence for a moment. "Elena," Daniel said softly, "may I see the ring?" She extended her hand, and he gently held her fingers, examining the small emerald. It's exactly as Grandma Dorothy described, he murmured. She always said David chose a green stone because it represented hope and renewal. When he released her hand, Eleanor felt a spark of electricity. Daniel, can I ask you something? Of course. Your grandmother mentioned that you also went through a recent loss. Daniel's face hardened slightly. My girlfriend, Sarah, she died in a car accident in June. She was coming home from work and a drunk driver. His voice failed. Elena felt her heart break. June was when my mother died. They looked at each other, both recognizing the painful synchronicity. That's why I've been working so many night shifts, Daniel continued. It's easier to be surrounded by patients who need me than to be alone at home with all the memories. I know exactly how you feel, Elena said softly. I've been working double shifts for the same reason. Daniel smiled sadly. I think our ancestors knew something we don't about healing. What do you mean? Well, David found healing by helping Rosa not feel alone, and Rosa found purpose helping David with his trauma. Maybe caring for each other is how we find our way back to life. Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. You really do have the same gentle eyes your grandmother described, and you have the same compassionate heart I always heard about Rosa. They laughed softly, and Elena realized it was the first genuine laugh she had given in months. Daniel, this might sound crazy, but would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Not as a date, she hurried to add, just as two people who understand each other's pain. Daniel smiled. I'd love to. Actually, I was thinking of suggesting the same thing. That night, they met at a small Mexican restaurant that Elena used to frequent with her mother. During dinner, they talked about everything, their losses, their fears, their hopes, their dreams. You know what's funny? Daniel said, eating a piece of enchilada. I've always wanted to learn Spanish, but never had enough motivation to really dedicate myself to it. I could teach you, Elena offered. My mother always said the best way to honor our heritage is to share it. And I could teach you about the Thompson family history, Daniel said. I have albums of old photos, letters that David wrote from the war before meeting your mother. Eleanor felt her heart accelerate. You have letters from him? Dozens. And you know what's most incredible? In the last letters, the ones he wrote after meeting Rosa, he sounds completely different. More hopeful, more alive. Could I see them someday? Of course. Actually, how about tomorrow? It's my day off. Elena smiled. Mine too. In the following days, Elena and Daniel began spending all their free time together. She taught him words and phrases in Spanish, and he shared family stories and showed David's precious letters. A week later, while they were sitting in Daniel's apartment, reading one of David's last letters, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. Daniel, listen to this, she said, translating part of the letter from Old English to Portuguese. David wrote, I found the most extraordinary woman. She has eyes like dark chocolate and a smile that could heal any wound. Her name is Rosa, which means rose in Spanish, and she is exactly as beautiful as her name suggests. Daniel smiled. He really loved her. But wait, there's more. Eleanor continued reading. Rosa told me about her dreams. She wants to be a nurse, wants to help people, especially children. She says that when we have children, she hopes to have a daughter with eyes like mine, but with her heart. A daughter who grows up knowing that love is the only thing that really matters in this world. Elena stopped reading, her voice failing. Daniel looked at her with wide eyes. Elena, you have light brown eyes, like mine, like David's. And you have your family's compassionate heart, Elena whispered, exactly like my mother. They looked at each other in silence, both realizing that maybe it wasn't coincidence that they had found each other. Elena, Daniel said softly, moving closer to her on the couch. Can I tell you something that might sound completely crazy? What? Since we met, I've been having the most vivid dreams. I dream I'm in 1979, and I see David and Rosa together. They're happy, laughing, planning their future. And always when I wake up, I have this strange feeling that they brought us to each other. Eleanor finished the sentence. Yes, exactly. Eleanor took Daniel's hand. I've been having dreams too. I dream of my mother when she was young, radiant with happiness, next to a man I had never seen before, but now I know was David. And in the dreams, they always look directly at me and smile, as if they're saying it's okay, that they found a way to be together again. Daniel intertwined his fingers with hers. Elena, I know we've only known each other for a week, and I know we're both dealing with enormous losses, but you feel it too, she said softly. I do. I feel like my heart is learning to beat again. Elena looked into his eyes, those gentle eyes Dorothy had described, eyes that had seemed familiar from the first moment. Daniel, do you believe some people are destined to find each other, even through time, through pain, through death? Now I do, he said. How could I not believe? He leaned toward her, and when their lips touched, Eleanor felt something she had thought was lost forever. Hope, pure, radiant hope. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. Is this real? Elena asked. More real than anything I've ever felt, Daniel replied. 3 months later, on a sunny March morning, Daniel and Elena were visiting Rosa Martinez's grave. Daniel held a bouquet of yellow sunflowers, her favorite flowers according to Elena. Mom, Elena said softly, placing the flowers on the headstone. I want you to meet Daniel. He's everything you said he would be. Gentle, compassionate, and he loves deeply, just like David loved you. Daniel knelt beside Elena. Rosa, I never had the chance to meet you, but I want to thank you for taking care of my uncle when he needed it most. And thank you for raising a daughter who taught me it's possible to love again after loss. Elena looked at him with eyes full of love. You want to know something incredible? What? In the last week of my mother's life, when she was too weak to talk much, she kept repeating 2 words. He's coming. He's coming. I thought she was delirious, but now we know she was seeing the future. Daniel finished. They remained in silence for a moment, each lost in thoughts about love, destiny, and the mysterious way life sometimes gives us exactly what we need when we least expect it. Elena, Daniel said finally, can I ask you something important? Anything. He turned to face her completely, his eyes serious and full of emotion. I know we're still getting to know each other. I know we're both still healing, but I also know that when you truly love someone, when you feel this person was sent into your life for a reason greater than ourselves, you shouldn't waste a single day. Elena's heart began to race. David and Rosa had only 6 months together, but those 6 months were intense enough to last 2 entire lifetimes. They didn't have time to hesitate, to question, to be afraid of the love they felt. Daniel took Elena's hands in his. Elena Martinez, I love you. I love your compassion, your strength, the way you care for others even when your own heart is broken. I love how you laugh, how you cry, how you talk about your mother as if she's still here with us. Tears began streaming down Elena's face. I know it's early. I know it might seem crazy, but I feel like David and Rosa brought us together because they knew we could give each other the love they never had the chance to live completely. Daniel took out a small velvet box from his pocket. This isn't David's ring, he said softly. That one belongs to you, as a reminder of their love. This is our ring for our love. Elena covered her mouth with her hands, sobbing. Elena, will you marry me? Not because our ancestors loved each other, but because I love you with every fiber of my being, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it every day. Yes, Elena whispered. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Daniel placed the ring on her finger, a beautiful white gold band with small diamonds that sparkled like stars. Now you have 2 rings, he said, kissing her hand. One representing eternal love, another representing new beginnings. Elena looked at the 2 rings, the emerald one on her right finger, the diamond one on her left. They're together again, she said, looking at her mother's headstone. Through us, David and Rosa are finally together again. Daniel pulled her into a tight embrace. And we are complete too. 6 months later, Eleanor and Daniel were married in a small, intimate ceremony at the same hospital where they both worked, the place where it all began for Rosa and David, and where it all began again for them. Dorothy Thompson, now 79 years old, was the matron of honor. In her speech, she said, "46 years ago, I watched my brother David find the love of his life in Rosa Martinez. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I would ever see. Today, I see their love blooming again through Elena and Daniel, and I realize that true love never dies. It just waits for the right opportunity to be reborn." During the ceremony, Elena wore her mother's wedding dress, simple but elegant, white lace with small pearls. In her bouquet, she had woven yellow sunflowers in honor of Rosa. Daniel wore the wristwatch that had belonged to David, a gift Dorothy had kept for decades, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. When the pastor asked if anyone present had any reason why they should not be married, a gentle breeze blew through the open chapel windows, making the candles flicker and spreading the scent of sunflowers throughout the room. Elena and Daniel smiled at each other, both feeling as if Rosa and David were there, blessing their union. "You may kiss," the pastor announced. When their lips touched, Elena felt as if 50 years of longing had finally been healed. 2 years later, Elena was sitting on the porch of their new house, a small but cozy house she and Daniel had bought together. In her lap, she held a 3-month-old baby, a girl with light brown eyes and dark hair like her grandmother Rosa. "What shall we call her?" Daniel had asked the day she was born. "Rosa," Elena had replied without hesitation. "Rosa Dorothy Thompson Martinez, to honor all the extraordinary women who brought us here." Now, holding little Rosa, Elena watched Daniel in the garden, planting sunflowers along the fence, a tradition they had started in their first house together. "You know, little Rosa," Elena whispered to the baby, "your great-grandmother Rosa and your great-great-uncle David loved each other so much that they found a way to keep loving through us. And now you're here, proof that true love really is eternal." The baby opened her eyes and looked directly at Elena, almost as if she understood every word. Daniel approached the porch, wiping the dirt from his hands. "How are my 2 favorite roses?" he asked, leaning down to kiss Elena and then the baby's forehead. "Perfect," Elena replied. "Daniel, can I tell you something that might sound crazy? After everything we've been through, nothing sounds crazy anymore," he laughed. "Sometimes, when I'm nursing Rosa at night, I feel like we're not alone in the room. Not in a haunted way," she hurried to explain, "but in a comforting way. Like there are gentle presences watching us with love." Daniel smiled. "I feel it too, especially when I sing lullabies to her. It's like there are voices whispering along with me." Eleanor looked at the sunflowers Daniel had planted. "Do you think they know? David and my mother, do you think they know about Rosa?" "I'm absolutely certain they do," Daniel said, sitting beside her on the porch. "Actually, I have something to show you that I found last night." He took an old envelope from his pocket. "I was organizing Grandma Dorothy's things. She's moving to a smaller retirement home, and I found this hidden among David's letters. It's from 1979, written a few days before he left." Elena adjusted Rosa in her arms and looked as Daniel carefully opened the letter. "Listen to this," he said, and began reading aloud. "Dear Dorothy, if something happens to me, I want you to know I found something more precious than gold these past months with Rosa. She taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a living force in the world. It's something that multiplies when it's shared, that strengthens when it's tested, and that never, ever really dies." Daniel paused, his voice becoming emotional. "But here's the most incredible part," he continued. David wrote, "I've been having the most vivid dreams lately. I dream that Rosa and I have a daughter, a beautiful girl with eyes like ours and a heart like hers. And in my dreams, this daughter grows up and finds someone special, someone who is family to us in a way I can't explain. They marry, have a daughter of their own, and our love continues living through them, generation after generation." Elena felt chills run through her entire body. "Daniel," she whispered, "he dreamed of us. David literally dreamed of our family. And there's more. Daniel said, turning the page. If my dreams are prophetic, if there really is a way for love to transcend death, then I know we'll find a way to be together again. Maybe not in this life, but through the lives we touch, through the love we plant in the world. Eleanor began to cry softly. The last part, Daniel said, his own voice breaking. And if Rosa ever has a daughter, I want her to know there's a man from the future waiting to love her with the same intensity I love her mother. A man who carries part of my soul and who will recognize her instantly because soulmates always find each other, even across time. Elena looked at Daniel through tears. He knew, in some impossible way he knew. And look at the date, Daniel said, showing the letter's header. June 23rd, 1979, exactly 44 years before the day we met. Elena held the baby tighter. Rosa, did you hear that? Your great-great-uncle David saw us in dreams decades before we were born. The baby made a small sound, almost as if she were responding. Daniel took Elena's free hand. Do you know what this means? What? It means our little Rosa is also part of the plan. That she'll grow up knowing she's part of a love story that's bigger than any of us individually. Elena smiled through tears. And one day, when she's old enough, we'll tell her about David and Rosa, about how their love created a chain that extends through time, and about how true love always finds a way to overcome death, distance, and even time, Daniel added. That night, after Rosa fell asleep in her crib, Eleanor and Daniel stayed awake in bed, talking about the extraordinary letter and all the small miracles that had led to their meeting. Daniel, Elena said softly in the darkness, do you ever wonder what other love stories like ours are happening in the world right now? What do you mean? How many people have lost love and don't know it can come back in a different form? How many people are giving up hope when they should be opening their hearts? Daniel turned to her. You're thinking of something specific. Elena smiled. I'm thinking maybe we could share our story. Not to boast, but to give hope to other people who think they've lost their chance at true love. How? We could write our story, or maybe make a documentary. Something that shows people that love is stronger than death, that true connections transcend a single life. Daniel kissed her forehead. I'd love that, especially if we could help other people believe in second chances. And third chances and fourth chances. Eleanor laughed softly. Because if I learned anything from our story, it's that love never gives up. It keeps trying until it finds a way to flourish. 3 months later, Elena and Daniel had begun writing their memoirs. They interviewed Dorothy, who, at 80, was still incredibly sharp about David and Rosa's memories. They digitized all of David's letters, all the old photos, and created a complete timeline of the extraordinary story that had united them. You know, Dorothy said during one of the interviews, in all my 80 years, I've never seen anything like you two. The way you found each other, the way you fit together perfectly. It's like watching a miracle in slow motion. Dorothy, Elena asked, do you really believe David and my mother somehow orchestrated our meeting? Dorothy smiled, her eyes sparkling with wisdom accumulated over decades. Dear, when you live as long as I have, you learn there are forces in the universe greater than our understanding. Call it destiny, call it God, call it transcendent love. The name doesn't matter. What matters is that some connections are so powerful that not even death can break them. Daniel held Elena's hand. And do you think other people will believe our story? They'll believe because it's true, Dorothy said firmly, and because deep in their hearts, all people hope for a love like this. You're offering proof that this kind of love really exists. 6 months later, Eleanor and Daniel launched a book called Love Beyond Time, How Two Souls Found Their Way Back to Each Other. The book became an instant phenomenon. Thousands of people wrote to them, sharing their own stories of losses, of hopes found and lost, of inexplicable connections they had experienced. A 60-year-old woman wrote, I lost my husband 5 years ago and thought my love life was over. After reading your story, I decided to open my heart again. I met a wonderful man at the local library, and we discovered our deceased spouses had been childhood friends. Sometimes love really does find a way to continue. A 42-year-old man wrote, "My first wife died of cancer when we were 25. For 17 years, I refused to date seriously, thinking it would betray her memory. Your story made me realize that loving again isn't betraying the past. It's honoring the love we learned from it." Elena and Daniel began giving talks across the country, sharing their story in hospitals, nursing homes, grief support groups, and universities. "The message we want to convey," Elena always said at the end of their talks, "isn't that all of you will have exactly the same experience we had. It's that true love, once it exists, never really dies. It can transform, it can take different forms, but its essence remains alive in the world." Daniel always added, "And sometimes if we keep our hearts open, if we're brave enough to love again despite the pain we've already faced, we can discover that those we've lost have found a way to send us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it most." 2 years after the book's release, Elena was pregnant again. This baby would be a boy, and they had already decided to call him David Francisco Thompson Martinez, honoring both David and Elena's father, Francisco. "Do you think David knows?" Elena asked Daniel one night, her hand on her growing abdomen. "I'm sure he does," Daniel replied. "And I bet he's excited to have a namesake." Elena laughed. "A complete family built on love we thought we had lost forever." "The family David dreamed of," Daniel corrected gently. "Remember the letter? He saw all this. Somehow he knew." On a special Sunday morning, when Rosa was 3 and little David was 6 months old, the family went to visit the graves of Rosa Martinez and David Thompson, which were in different cemeteries, but which Elena and Daniel visited religiously every month. First, they went to Rosa's grave. Elena placed fresh sunflowers while Daniel held baby David, and Rosa, the 3-year-old, talked to the headstone as if she were speaking directly to her great-grandmother. "Great-grandma Rosa," Rosa said with her clear, childish voice, "Daddy said you gave me my pretty eyes. Thank you. And you also brought Daddy to Mommy so I could exist. Thank you for that, too." Elena and Daniel exchanged emotional glances. Then they drove to the cemetery where David was buried. Dorothy, now 82, met them there. Despite her age, she still insisted on accompanying them whenever possible. "Uncle David," Rosa said, placing her small hand on the headstone, "you never saw me, but I see you in my dreams sometimes. You and great-grandma Rosa are always smiling and telling me to take good care of Mommy and Daddy." Daniel knelt beside his daughter. "What else do they say in your dreams, dear?" Rosa tilted her head, thoughtful. "They say, love is like seeds in the wind. When you plant love, it grows in places you never imagine." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. At 3 years old, Rosa often said things too profound for her age. Dorothy approached and held Elena's hand. "This child carries something special. You can see it in the words that come from her mouth." "Grandma Dorothy," Rosa asked, "do you miss Uncle David?" Dorothy smiled. "Every day, dear. But I don't get sad, because I know he's happy. He found a way to keep loving through your family." Rosa nodded seriously. "And when I grow up, I'll find someone to love too, and love will keep growing forever and ever." "Exactly," Elena said, picking up her daughter. "That's how love works. It never ends, it just keeps spreading." That night, after the children fell asleep, Elena and Daniel sat on their porch, watching the stars. The sunflowers Daniel had planted years before had now multiplied throughout the garden, creating a golden sea that swayed gently in the evening breeze. "Danielle," Elena said softly, "sometimes I still can't believe all this is real." "What do you mean?" "All this happiness, all this family, all this love. 5 years ago I was completely lost, without hope, thinking I would never be happy again. And now you have everything your mother dreamed for you," Daniel completed. Elena snuggled against him. "No, we have everything Rosa and David dreamed for us, for all future generations." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "And you know what the best part is?" "What?" "This is just the beginning. Rosa and little David will grow up knowing they're part of something bigger, that they carry a love that is literally eternal. They'll find their own true loves, and our story will continue expanding." Elena smiled in the darkness. Sometimes I think about all the people who don't know stories like ours are possible, people who gave up hope, who closed their hearts because they lost someone they loved. That's why we keep sharing our story, Daniel said, to remind the world that true love never really ends, and that sometimes, Elena added, those we've lost find creative ways to send us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it most. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind whisper through the sunflowers. Elena, Daniel said finally, can I ask you a question I've been thinking about for months? Of course. If you could speak to Rosa and David now, what would you say? Elena thought for a long moment. I'd say thank you. Thank you for not giving up on love even when it was torn from you. Thank you for finding a way to plant seeds that bloomed decades later. Thank you for showing us that true love is stronger than anything, stronger than death, stronger than time, stronger than any force in the universe. Daniel held her hand. And I'd say I promise to keep honoring the love you began. I promise to teach our children about you, about the power of true love, and about how sometimes life's greatest miracles come disguised as coincidences. At that moment, a gentle breeze blew through the garden, making the sunflowers dance and releasing their sweet fragrance into the night air. Elena and Daniel smiled, feeling as if they had received a silent but clear answer. Rosa and David's love had found its way to continue, and now it would flourish forever through the generations they had helped create. 5 years later, when Rosa was 8 and David was 5, they were playing in the garden while Elena and Daniel watched from the porch. Elena was pregnant again, a girl they planned to call Dorothy Rosa, in honor of the extraordinary woman who had made everything possible. "Mom," Rosa called from the garden, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." Rosa ran to the porch, followed by her brother. "David and I were talking about Great-Grandma Rosa and Great-Great-Uncle David. Do you think they know about the baby that's coming?" Elena smiled, touching her belly. "I'm sure they do." "And are they happy?" David asked with his curious 5 years. "Very happy," Daniel replied. "They're probably celebrating up in heaven." Rosa became thoughtful. "Mom, when I grow up and get married, will my children also be part of their love story?" Elena felt her heart accelerate at the depth of her 8-year-old daughter's question. "Yes, dear, because when you truly love someone, that love becomes part of who you are. And when you have children, you pass that love forward. That's how love becomes eternal." David, the boy, frowned. "So love never dies?" "Never," Elena and Daniel said at the same time. Rosa smiled. "So Great-Grandma Rosa and Great-Great-Uncle David will be with us forever." "Forever and always," Elena confirmed. The children ran back to the garden, shouting with joy at this revelation. Daniel took Elena's hand. "Do you realize what we just did?" "What?" "We planted the seeds of the next generation of the story. Rosa and David will grow up looking for the kind of love we had, knowing it's possible, knowing it's worth waiting for." Elena smiled. "And when they find it, they'll know they're part of something much bigger than themselves." That night, after the children fell asleep, Elena found Daniel in the baby's room that was still being prepared, assembling the crib that had belonged to Rosa as a baby. "Thinking about something?" she asked. "Thinking about how Rosa Martinez and David Thompson could never have imagined that their 6-month love would result in all this," he said, gesturing around. "A house full of love, children who carry their traits, a story that inspires thousands of people." Elena approached and hugged him from behind. They knew something special was happening. "You read David's letters. He dreamed of this." "That's true. And you know what the most incredible part is?" "What?" "Our story isn't over yet. Our little Dorothy Rosa will grow up and have her own love story, and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Rosa and David's love will continue multiplying for generations and generations." Elena rested her head on Daniel's shoulder. "A legacy of eternal love. The best kind of legacy there is." 3 months later, Dorothy Rosa was born on a sunny spring morning. When Elena held her for the first time, the baby immediately opened her eyes and looked directly at her with dark brown eyes. exactly like Rosa Martinez's. "Welcome to the family, little Dorothy," Elena whispered. "You're the continuation of a love story that began long before you were born, and that will continue long after we all depart." Daniel leaned down to kiss the baby's forehead. "And you'll grow up knowing you're loved not only by us, but by people who departed before you were born, but who helped create the path for your existence." Dorothy, the elderly woman, now 85 but still lucid and strong, was in the hospital room holding Elena's hand. "This child," she said softly, "is living proof that true love never dies. She carries Rosa's DNA, David's personality, both your hearts and the future of generations yet unborn." Elena looked at Daniel, then at Dorothy, then at the baby in her arms. "You know what excites me most?" "What?" Daniel asked. "One day, when Dorothy Rosa is a young woman, she'll tell this story to her own children, and they'll tell it to their children. And somehow, Rosa Martinez and David Thompson will continue living through each new generation." Dorothy smiled through tears. "My brother David would have been so proud. He always said he wanted to leave something beautiful in the world. Well, he did. He left all of you." 6 months later, the family received a letter that would change their lives once more. It was from a movie production company that had read their book and wanted to turn their story into a film. "Do you really want Hollywood to tell our story?" Elena asked Daniel as they read the proposal. "Only if we can have control over how it's told," Daniel replied. "This isn't just our story. It's Rosa and David's story too." They spent months working with screenwriters to ensure every detail was authentic, every emotion genuine, that the message of hope and eternal love was preserved. The film, called Love Without End: A True Story, was released 2 years later and became a worldwide phenomenon. People from every country wrote to Eleanor and Daniel, sharing their own experiences of loss and renewal. One particularly touching letter came from a woman in Germany. "Dear Elena and Daniel, I lost my husband in the war 30 years ago. Since then, I closed my heart to love, thinking it would be disrespectful to his memory. After watching your film, I realized maybe he had sent signs I wasn't ready to see. Yesterday, at 70, I accepted an invitation to dinner with a gentleman I met at the library. We discovered our deceased spouses served in the same battalion. Maybe it's not coincidence. Thank you for reminding me it's never too late for love." A letter from a man in Japan said, "My wife died young, leaving me with 2 small daughters. For 15 years, I focused only on raising them, refusing to consider a new relationship. My oldest daughter showed me your film and said, 'Dad, Mom wouldn't be happy knowing you closed your heart.' Last week, I met a wonderful woman at the park, where I take my youngest daughter to play. She's also a widow, also has children. We're taking it slow, but for the first time in years, I feel hope. Thank you for reminding me that love can be reborn." Elena and Daniel realized their story had become something much bigger than they had imagined. It had become a beacon of hope for grieving people around the world. "Do you think Rosa and David knew this would happen?" Elena asked Daniel one night after reading dozens of similar letters. "I think they knew that planting love always results in more love," Daniel replied. "But I doubt they could imagine the scale of what they created." At that moment, Dorothy Rosa, now 2 years old, came running into the room, followed by Rosa, 10 years old, and David, 7 years old. "Mom, Dad," Rosa said, breathless with excitement, "I just had the most beautiful dream." Elena and Daniel exchanged glances. Rosa often had vivid dreams that seemed like more than just dreams. "Tell us, dear," Elena said. "I dreamed of great-grandma Rosa and great-great-uncle David again. But this time, they weren't alone. There were hundreds of people with them, all smiling and saying thank you." "Thank you for what?" Daniel asked. "For love," Rosa replied simply. "They said that every time someone reads our story and decides to open their heart again, more love enters the world, and all that extra love makes the whole world a little happier." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. "Anything else?" "Yes. Great-grandma Rosa said to tell you she's very proud of you, Mom." And great-great-uncle David said to tell you that you fulfilled all the promises he made in his heart. Daniel put his arm around Elena, both completely moved. And they said one more thing, Rosa continued. They said that when Dorothy Rosa grows up, she'll have a special gift for helping other people find love, like it's her job to keep spreading the love they started. Everyone looked at Dorothy Rosa, who was playing quietly on the floor with her dolls, as if she hadn't heard anything special. The family gift, Elena whispered. Each generation has the responsibility to keep spreading love. And we'll teach them, Daniel said, just like Rosa and David taught us, even through time. 10 years later, Rosa was 20 and studying to become a psychologist specializing in couples counseling. David was 17 and had decided he wanted to follow his parents' footsteps and become a nurse. Dorothy Rosa, at 12, already showed extraordinary intuition for connecting people. She often introduced classmates who ended up becoming friends or boyfriends. It's like she has radar for compatible souls, Elena commented to Daniel one evening. Just like Dorothy had radar to connect us, Daniel replied. Dorothy Thompson had passed away peacefully at 89, but not before seeing all 3 grandchildren grow and flourish. In her last days, she had told Elena and Daniel, "I've fulfilled my mission. I saw David and Rosa's love flourish through you. I saw your children grow up knowing they're part of something magical. Now I can go in peace, knowing the story will continue through them." Nanda, at Dorothy's funeral, hundreds of people appeared, not just family and friends, but people who had been touched by Rosa and David's story through the book and film. It was a celebration of life that lasted all day. Grandma Dorothy brought people together until the end, Rosa said in the eulogy she gave. She knew her mission on Earth was to be a bridge between souls who needed to meet. Through her, we learned our own love story, and through our story, thousands of other people found hope for their own love journeys. After the funeral, Elena, Daniel, and the children went to visit the graves of Rosa Martinez and David Thompson. Now they're all together again, Dorothy Rosa said simply, placing flowers on both graves. Dorothy, Rosa, and David, the family is complete in heaven. Eleanor took her daughter's hand. And the family continues here on Earth through us. And through the children you'll have, David added, and the children of children. Rosa smiled. Sometimes I think about what it will be like when I marry and have my own children. They'll grow up hearing this story and knowing they're part of something eternal. And one day, Elena said, when you're old like Daniel and I are now, you'll tell this story to your grandchildren, and they'll marvel at the power of true love. That's how the best stories survive, Daniel added. They're passed from heart to heart, from generation to generation. That night, in the privacy of their room, Elena and Daniel, now 45 and 47 respectively, talked about the legacy they had built. When we met at that hospital 15 years ago, Elena said, do you think we could have imagined all this? No, Daniel replied honestly. I was just a broken man waiting for a miracle. I didn't know the miracle would come in the form of you. Elena snuggled against him. And I was just a woman lost in grief, thinking I'd never be happy again. I didn't know Rosa and David had conspired for decades to bring us together. And look where we are now, Daniel said, kissing the top of her head. 3 beautiful children, a house full of love, a story that inspired thousands of people around the world. A legacy that will continue long after we depart, Elena added. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Elena, can I tell you something I've never told you before? Of course. Sometimes late at night, when everyone's sleeping, I sit on the porch and feel presences around me, not in a haunted way, but in a comforting way. Like Rosa, David and Dorothy are all there, watching our family with immense pride. Elena smiled in the darkness. I feel it too, especially when I'm cooking. Rosa always teaches me through recipes I never learned, but somehow know how to make. And when I'm caring for the wounded at the hospital, sometimes I feel like David is guiding my hands. They never really left us, Daniel said softly. No, they evolved. They became part of who we are, part of the love we give to the world. 20 years later, Elena and Daniel were sitting on the same porch, now as grandparents. Rosa had married a wonderful psychologist named Miguel, and they had 5-year-old twins, a girl named Rosa Elena and a boy named David Miguel. David had married a gentle nurse named Sarah, and they had a 3-year-old daughter named Dorothy. Dorothy Rosa, now 32, had become a renowned marriage counselor and had married a man named James, having 2 young children. 7 grandchildren, Elena said, watching all the children play in the garden that now extended almost an acre, completely covered with sunflowers. Rosa and David must be absolutely euphoric. And all 7 know the story, Daniel added. Rosa Elena can recite the entire story by heart, and she's only 5. At that moment, Rosa Elena came running to the porch. Grandma Elena, Grandpa Daniel, I had another dream about great-great-grandma Rosa and great-great-great-uncle David. Elena smiled. Little Rosa Elena had inherited the family gift for vivid dreams and spiritual connections. Tell us, dear, Daniel said, picking her up. They were in a very beautiful place, full of golden light and sunflowers that never wilt. And there were thousands of people with them, all the people who found love because of your story. Elena felt her heart accelerate. What else did you see? I saw a woman in China who met her husband after reading your book. I saw a man in Africa who decided to remarry after being widowed for 10 years. I saw a young woman in Brazil who almost gave up on love, but then watched your movie and decided to give true love a chance. Daniel exchanged glances with Eleanor. The girl's intuition was extraordinary. And great-great-grandma Rosa told me something very important, Rosa Elena continued. She said that when I grow up, I'll write a book about all the families that were created because of your story. A book about how love multiplies through generations. Elena held her breath. Did she say anything else? Yes, she said our family has a special mission. We are guardians of eternal love. Our responsibility is to remind the world that true love never dies. It just transforms. Daniel kissed the girl's forehead. And are you ready for that responsibility? Rosa Elena smiled with the wisdom of someone much older than her 5 years. I was born ready, Grandpa. We were all born ready. That's what we're here for. That night, after all the grandchildren had gone home with their parents, Eleanor and Daniel sat in their room, flipping through photo albums that documented 50 years of love, starting with the black and white photos of Rosa Martinez and David Thompson from the 70s, through their own wedding photos, photos of their children growing up, and now photos of their grandchildren. 50 years, Elena said softly. 50 years since Rosa and David met, and look what their love created. Daniel turned a page and stopped at a photo of the entire family taken last Christmas. 23 people spread across the living room, all smiling, all connected by an invisible thread of love that began with 2 young nurses in 1978. You know what impresses me most? Daniel asked. What? Every person in this photo exists because of 6 months of love between Rosa and David. 6 months that were interrupted by tragedy, but that planted seeds for decades of happiness. Elena touched the photo softly. And every person in this photo will have children, and those children will have children, and Rosa and David's love will continue multiplying forever. A truly eternal love, Daniel agreed. The next day, Elena received a call that surprised her completely. It was from a documentary producer who wanted to make a follow-up film, showing how Elena and Daniel's story had impacted people around the world over 20 years. We've received thousands of letters from people whose lives were changed by your story, the producer explained. We want to document some of these stories, show how love spreads in waves through society. Elena looked at Daniel, who had heard the conversation on speakerphone. You want to make a documentary about the documentaries about us? Elena asked, laughing. We want to make a documentary about the power of true love to transform not just 2 people, but entire communities, entire countries, the producer corrected. Your story has become a global phenomenon. Couples around the world name children in honor of Rosa and David. Hospitals have sunflower gardens inspired by you. Grief support groups use your story as an example of hope. Daniel took Elena's hand. What do you think? Elena thought for a moment. I think Rosa and David would like us to keep spreading hope. Then make the documentary, Elena told the producer, but with one condition. What? We want part of the profits to go to a foundation that helps grieving people find support and hope. Something called the Rosa and David Foundation. Perfect. The producer agreed immediately. 6 months later, filming began. The documentary crew traveled to 16 countries, interviewing people whose lives had been touched by Elena and Daniel's story. They interviewed Maria, a 60-year-old woman in Spain who had lost her husband in the war and remained single for 30 years until reading Elena and Daniel's book. After that, she opened herself to love again and found a wonderful companion at 62. They interviewed Chen, a man in China who had lost his wife in an accident and was planning never to marry again until watching the film. He met a widow in a support group, and now they have a blended family of 6 children. They interviewed Sarah, a young woman in Australia who was heartbroken after a difficult divorce and had sworn never to trust love again. Elena and Daniel's story inspired her to try again, and she found true love with a man who had also gone through losses. What impresses me most, the documentary director said to Elena during one of the interviews, is how your story became a kind of secular gospel of love. People who aren't even religious talk about Rosa and David as if they were patron saints of eternal love. Elena smiled. Maybe that's what they became. Not saints in the traditional religious sense, but symbols of hope for anyone who has ever loved and lost. And what does that mean to you personally? The director asked. Elena looked at Daniel, who was sitting beside her. It means we're not just Elena and Daniel living our own love story. We're guardians of something much bigger. We have the responsibility to keep reminding the world that true love never dies. Daniel added, and it means that when we depart, our story will continue through our children, our grandchildren, and through all the people around the world who found hope in our journey. The documentary, called The Legacy of Eternal Love, was released 2 years later and won several international awards. But more important than the awards were the thousands of new letters Elena and Daniel received from people inspired to open their hearts again. At a special ceremony for the documentary's launch, Elena, now 68, and Daniel, 70, took the stage to give a final speech. When we met 35 years ago, Elena said to the audience of thousands, we were just 2 broken people looking for healing. We had no idea our story would become something so much bigger than ourselves. Daniel continued, but now we realize it was never really about us. It was always about Rosa Martinez and David Thompson and the eternal love they planted in the world. We were just the lucky gardeners chosen to tend the seeds they planted. Elena nodded. And now those seeds have become an entire forest of love. Every person whose heart was touched by our story, every couple that formed after reading our book, every child born because their parents were inspired to love again. They're all part of Rosa and David's forest of love. And the forest keeps growing, Daniel added. It will continue growing long after we depart, through our children, our grandchildren, and through every person who hears this story and decides to believe in the transformative power of true love. Elena smiled at the audience. Our final message to you is simple. If you've lost love, don't give up hope. If you're heartbroken, remember that breaking is just the first step to healing. And if you've found love, protect it, nurture it, and share it, because true love is the only thing in this world that multiplies when divided. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your love journeys, Daniel concluded. And always remember, love never dies. It just waits for the right opportunity to flourish again. The audience erupted in applause that lasted 10 minutes. When they finally quieted, Elena and Daniel walked off the stage hand in hand, knowing they had fulfilled their mission to spread Rosa and David's message to the world. That night, at home, surrounded by their children, sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, and 7 grandchildren, Elena and Daniel sat on their familiar porch, watching 3 generations of their family playing in the sunflower garden that now stretched as far as the eye could see. "You know what makes me happiest?" Elena asked Daniel. "What?" "Our grandchildren will tell this story to their children, and those children will tell it to their children. In 100 years, in 200 years, children will still be hearing about Rosa Martinez and David Thompson and about how true love transcends even death." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. "And in 1,000 years, when humanity has evolved in ways we can't even imagine, the fundamental truth will remain the same. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. And Rosa and David will be remembered forever as the 2 young people who discovered this truth and planted it in the world to flourish eternally," Elena concluded. At that moment, a gentle wind blew through the garden, making thousands of sunflowers sway in a synchronized dance that seemed almost choreographed. The golden, sweet fragrance of the flowers filled the air, and for a moment, Elena and Daniel felt as if Rosa, David, and Dorothy were there with them, smiling with approval at everything their love had created. "They know," Elena whispered. "They know their mission was fulfilled, and will continue to be fulfilled," Daniel replied, "forever and always." As the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in golden tones that matched perfectly with the sea of sunflowers, Elena and Daniel remained on their porch, watching 3 generations of love playing and laughing together in the garden. A garden that had begun with a simple seed of love planted by 2 young nurses more than 50 years ago. And somewhere, in the space between the visible and invisible, between the temporal and eternal, Rosa Martinez and David Thompson watched with hearts overflowing with joy, knowing that their 6-month love had transformed into a legacy that would last forever. Because this is the truth about true love. It never really ends. It just finds new ways to begin again and again, through every heart brave enough to believe it's worth risking everything for a chance to love and be loved eternally. And so, the most beautiful love story ever told continues to write itself, one heart at a time, one life at a time, one generation at a time, until the end of time. So, didn't this story deeply touch your heart? This is living proof that true love transcends everything, death, time, the most impossible circumstances. Rosa and David taught us that when we truly love, we plant seeds that will flourish for generations and generations. If this story moved you as much as it moved me, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any story that will touch your soul. Tell me here in the comments, do you believe love can transcend death? Have you ever lived an inexplicable experience that made you believe there's something greater than us? Or maybe you have your own love story that seems to have been orchestrated by destiny. Share this video with that special person who needs to believe in miracles, in second chances, and in the transformative power of true love. And always remember, if Rosa and David could create an eternal legacy with just 6 months of love, imagine what you can create with the love that exists in your heart. Never give up hope, because true love always finds a way to flourish, even in the most unexpected moments. Until the next story that will make you believe even more in the infinite power of love, a hug from the bottom of my heart.